Well, since everyone liked the last video I did on this about the original Jurassic Park, least accurate to most accurate dinosaurs, I decided, well, let's just continue it and do the rest of the series, why not? And so we're going to talk about the Lost World today, but there are a couple things to note. First of all, as you have undoubtedly noticed, there's no video footage, because Universal didn't really get on with me using footage from the movie in my initial part, but to be fair, they were kind enough to let the videos stay up. They just take all the money for it, which, I mean, okay, if you guys can watch it, I can get over that, it's okay. But to avoid that in the future, we're just gonna use stills from the movie instead, which is fine. I mean, we can analyze the animals better, and in many cases, a lot of the animals have so little screen time that it's actually pretty hard for me to use active footage. So, stills might make for a better video anyway, if we look on the bright side of things. The other thing is that, unless there's some key difference as some animals go through changes between movies, I'm not gonna mention repeats. So, like, for example, the T-Rex and the Velociraptors do appear in The Lost World. But I really have nothing to add regarding their accuracy in their portrayal in this particular movie. They're pretty much the same. The same issues apply. The same bonuses and good points apply. So, yeah, the only thing to mention is that the T-Rex offers gender dimorphism for the first time in the series, which is a pretty cool addition. And the raptors have a tiger stripe pattern, which, while not doing anything to enhance their paleontological accuracy, is actually more in line with Michael Crichton's description from the books. He always described them as having those tiger stripes. So, but other than that, it's still the same thing, so I'm not really going to talk about them, or most of the other repeats. But if there's a key difference, or more to say, I will be repeating some species. But outside of that, the same standards apply. Welcome to Dinosaurs, ranked from least to most accurate in the Lost World Jurassic Park. Compsognathus. Ugh. The thing that annoys me the most about the Compies is that they had no reason to be as inaccurate as they are, because it's purely based off one line in this blasted movie. And I made a standalone video explaining this issue, but basically, in the books, this species was not Compsognathus. It was Procompsognathus, which is actually a completely separate animal and not even as closely related as was initially thought. But they changed it to Compsognathus for the movie. Except, this man refers to them as Compsognathus triascus. Triascus being the species name of Procompsognathus. Regular Compsognathus is Compsognathus longips. So which one is it? Because they basically combined the genus Compsognathus with the species Triascus, but that's not a thing. So what are these? Well, generally, it's just assumed they're actually Compsognathus longips, and that he's wrong. Which, okay. I just don't know why anyone didn't even say anything about this. That's one key issue, an element of confusion that adds to this animal, but in terms of the actual design of the animal, well, they have pronated wrists, because of course they do. What else is new? And, yeah, they don't have any feathers, and Compies probably did, historically speaking. But we're not talking about the feathers again. I'm not doing it. But yes, they probably should have those. Additionally, they're portrayed as having only 2 functional fingers on their hands, with a vestigial third one. Now, in the film's defense, that was actually once thought to be correct, but new research shows that they probably had 3 functional fingers. They're also a little bit too big, but only by like 0.3 meters, like a decimal point, so it's not a major issue in that regard. And their behavior. Let's talk about that. Well, for one thing, in the books, Compies were portrayed as having a venomous bite. There is no evidence for that in the fossil record. Though in the Lost World, this venom element is never mentioned, so it's not believed that they do, at least in the film universe. But they do hunt in packs, and tend to go after much larger prey than themselves in groups, This overwhelming swarm behavior doesn't actually have any evidence for it, but, I mean, it's not impossible. Small theropods were believed to be pretty intelligent, so the notion of compies operating as a group isn't something that would be considered completely unreasonable, but yeah, there's no evidence for that particular precise behavior. They were generally considered to be scavengers or went after smaller prey like lizards and insects. But, in any event, yeah, the compies aren't very accurate, but it's mostly because of that blasted line. They're not Triassicus. That's Compsognathus. They're long gypes. Why did they even bring you? Parasaurolophus, which I consistently mispronounce as Parasaurolophus, like a fool. But Parasaurolophus was mentioned last time, so why am I bringing it up again? Well, I didn't have much to say last time, because as I mentioned, the paras that are seen in the original Jurassic Park are far away and very blurry. They don't really have much screen time, so it's pretty difficult to nitpick them. But they get much more screen time in the Lost World and are much, much closer up. So now we can actually nitpick this. They resemble the precise species Parasaurolophus walkeri, but these ones aren't as tall as the original animal, being 10 meters in length instead of 11.45 meters, but that's not a massive issue. Interestingly though, these animals have a habit of standing upright on their hind limbs, almost dragging their tails, which, no. No, the original animal were probably on all fours for pretty much always. Could they rear? Maybe, but they likely would never have walked around like that, let alone run. But I admit a lot of these are kind of nitpicky, and the exact size ratio is all over the place with the animals, so I can't cut down on them too hard. Pteranodon. Perhaps I must refresh your memory. I enjoy the Lost World Jurassic Park. I know some people don't care for it, but I think that movie is actually pretty good. Not as good as the original, sure, but still a great movie. And I do remember exactly where the Pteranodon appears. Very briefly, at the very end of the movie. Also, some of you are probably already typing in the comments, this isn't a dinosaur. And yes, you are correct! Technically, this particular animal defies the title of this video, because this is a flying reptile, not a dinosaur. And I'm well aware of that. But it is a prehistoric animal that does appear in Jurassic Park, and there are a handful of these creatures that show up that aren't technically dinosaurs, but are still in the movie, so we're still going to talk about them anyway, because, well, frankly, you'd be mad if I didn't. Don't lie. You'd be like, hey, what about that? Or no, it's not a dinosaur, but you still should have talked about it. So I'm not playing this game. We're just going to talk about it, okay? And in terms of accuracy, interestingly, despite only appearing for a few seconds, this animal does give us quite a lot to work with, because it's not very accurate to Pteranodon. It's very bird-like, which it's a flying reptile. The dinosaurs are more close to birds than this thing would be, even though it flies. It's got a bipedal gait, as well as neck posture with a hooked beak. Which, no, I don't even know where they got that. They also lack pycnofibers, which all pterosaurs would have had, though I view that in the same light as some of the dinosaurs lacking feathers. I don't even care anymore. But one thing that does really bother me about Pteranodon is that they can use their hind legs for grasping and sit like that on the branch. That, probably shouldn't even be possible. The hind legs of a Pteranodon just aren't angled that way. So yeah, for only appearing for all of 10 seconds, you sure have a lot wrong with you. I don't even know what happened here. Stegosaurus. Ah, nice. As I mentioned last time, Stegosaurus technically appeared in the first novel, but they don't appear in the films until the second movie. And they're in a pretty awesome scene, and to be fair, we are getting into more accurate dinosaurs when it comes to this, but the Stegosaurs in the Lost World are still a little bit off. For one thing, the largest of them in this scene are considered too big. Some of them are said to be 12 meters long, which is bigger than the largest known species of Stegosaurus. Their necks are a little short, they lack throat armor, and they don't have ossicles. They're also missing the downward curved tips on their tails, though at least in the Lost World they're actually holding their tails somewhat correctly. Their later appearance in Jurassic World, they're actually holding them much too low. And the adult clones appear to have 22 plates on their backs, which is wrong, as there were 17 in the original species. So, yeah, I don't know really how they missed that. Like, is it hard to count things? Like, come on, I'm just saying. But, admittedly, you can look at them and say, that's a Stegosaurus. So, all these little, small issues aside, they get a solid C+ from me. Mamenchisaurus. Ah yes, some people don't even know these guys were in Lost World, but yes, those giant sauropods you see are not apatosaurs. Those are Mamenchisaurs. Notable, as historically they had 19 neck vertebrae, more than any other dinosaur, and therefore had one of the longest necks, probably the longest neck of any dinosaur. They were huge, which the movie does pretty well at portraying. They're big, so I think the size is pretty accurate, but they're not holding their necks right. And, it bothers me. Their necks are held up in sort of an arch, which probably wouldn't even be physically possible with the way their neck vertebrae were laid out. They likely held their necks pretty straight at an angle. Additionally, at least one species of Mamenchisaur had kind of a tail club and a hump. These ones don't, but we're not exactly certain which species of Mamenchisaurs these are supposed to be. There are multiple species underneath the genus Mamenchisaurus, and a couple of them don't have those features, so you could argue that perhaps these are just them, but there's still the issue of the neck, which they are not holding the proper way. Their necks are broken. They need some medical attention. That's what I'm trying to say. Pachycephalosaurus. This is probably the most accurate of the new dinosaurs, and appears pretty briefly, but has a pretty awesome scene of, well, ramming into things. And that's probably pretty accurate. They probably did that. They probably did it a lot. That's what their dome heads were for. Them ramming as a defensive mechanism, especially against human beings that wouldn't be that much bigger than them. Yeah, no, I can see them doing that exact thing. The only real issues with this portrayal of the animal is that I think the skull is a little too robust. Probably should be a bit narrower, and they are slightly larger than actual Pachycephalosaurs. But outside of those two minor issues, they're alright. Oh yeah, they got the pronated wrists. But I didn't even notice that half the time. I swear almost every theropod has that problem in the Jurassic Park universe, so the heck with it. But yeah, that's wrong too. And with that, a special thanks goes out to all my apex predators. Arthur Roy, Metal for Life Guy, and Dr. Razor78. Till next time, this is Darkness, and a bit of fun. Farewell.